Let's roll, baby. Welcome in Thursday edition of East Coast Bias right here on FanDuel TV. Of course, for your friends honoring a gambling show, the Triple Threat has reconvened after the NBA Finals have come and gone. We have a round one of the NBA draft that we have to try to make sense of as far as the movement and shaking from the odds board. Because, listen, you can find a whole lot of places to get your college scouting reports. You're not going to get that from three of us right here. We are going to look at the odds markets, though, and try to tell you what's what, and maybe if there's some opportunity based upon something that happened on Wednesday night. Let's welcome in Raheem Palmer from Las Vegas. Joe House, his whiz, always find themselves in the middle of these lotteries. We'll get to that. He's in D.C. JJ Johnson-Stremski in New York City. Let's start here, guys. Obviously, Flag goes 1. Harper goes 2, no surprise. Bailey ends up at 5, which is interesting because he was an absolute pain in the neck with these workouts. Danny Ainge doesn't care. Says, hey, you're coming to Houston. Play nice. Make nice. That's what it's going to be. Here's how I'll start this, House. First round so far. Lottery so far. If there's something that moves the needle from an odds perspective, maybe it's a team you like more to make the playoffs. Maybe it's a team you're eyeing as a potential over. I know we don't have those totals yet, but just starting to see the pieces that are in place. Maybe 2 and 2, connect the dots, go from there. Is there a takeaway you have from the lottery portion of the draft that you can connect odds-wise into something we may get involved with come the fall?
This may not be available at the time the dust settles and these win totals come out, but it looks to me and my untrained eye that the New Orleans Pelicans are up to something. And by up to something, I mean building a team that may exist without their star player, who just hired, what seems like the first time in his career, a serious agent in the form of Bill Duffy. This Derek Queen, Jeremiah Fears combo, the direction that they're headed in, it looks to me like they might be preparing for a rebuild. And so strong under vibes coming out of New Orleans. That's my first assessment here, Dream.
Yeah, I definitely thought that was interesting for them to trade up to get Derek Queen. Like that was, one of the things that was just shocking for me. Obviously, you do have Zion Williamson, but I don't know how those two pieces fit together. So that was very, very fascinating for me.
Okay, Raheem, House, both of you boys had teams that were picking in the lottery. Both of you kind of are in different states when it comes to your basketball team. House, the Wiz have been rebuilding basically since the days of Gilbert Arenas and John Wall. Sorry about that. And for you, Raheem, you've had to go through the remnants of the process, the Embiid injury, last year, the nightmarish season, one of the all-time flops you'll see from an NBA team as far as a win total perspective is concerned. I'll start with you, Raheem. Your thoughts on Philadelphia going and getting Mr. Edgecombe, who obviously fits the mold and fits the bill of what Daryl Morey wants in a player. And there's talent on the Sixer roster. There's no getting around that. If Embiid plays, Maxey, McCain, on and on we go. Edgecombe, your thoughts?
Obviously, you look at VJ Edgecombe, he's just very explosive. But I just don't know how he fits in with this Sixers team. You already got Tyrese Maxey. You already got Jarrett McCain. It just feels like a weird addition. And, it's unfortunate that Ace Bailey couldn't work out for this team because I think he was a better fit. So I don't know where this Sixers team is going. I don't know what the direction is for this team. It just feels like we're almost on two timelines right now because you got Joel Embiid, who is a former league MVP. You got Paul George, who was banged up all last season, very disappointing. And then you have this young core of guards in Tyrese Maxey, Jarrett McCain, and now VJ Edgecombe. So I'm going to give Daryl Morey the benefit of the doubt, but I just don't know which direction they're taking this franchise at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to agree with Dream real quick on this Philadelphia 76ers situation. I wondered if we would get any resolution to the identity crisis that they are currently dealing with? And the answer to that is no, because Edgecombe is for sure a value play and the kind of guy, he plays, he's capable of both ends of the floor. And that's the thing that's just, it really sets Daryl Morey on fire. And there's no question whatsoever about his commitment and where his mentality is, but it does not answer any of the big picture questions with the Sixers. And maybe it remains to be seen. Like, there's still half of the draft to go. There's still, all of the free agency period. Maybe they will reveal their grand plan over time. But for me, with my Washington squad, JJ, just, when you're looking at a team that is 25 points behind in net rating, the team that just won the NBA championship, you pretty much are open to the idea of improving on both sides of the ball. I really wanted Kamal Malawak from Duke because I loved the idea of a reliable, he might be single skill or just have two skills, but those two skills are so impactful in this current NBA, the shot blocking, the rim protecting, and the rebounding. But Trey Johnson, Washington was one of the two worst teams in the NBA scoring from the mid-range and from three. So we've addressed that. The knocks are, we have a lot of 6'5" guards on this team. Like, what's the impact on Bub Carrington when you have Trey Johnson? And Trey Johnson isn't a guy that's getting to the rim. He's not a guy that's going and getting free throws. He's through 33 games, he had 95 pull-up threes and 99 pull-up twos and 80 something finishes at the rim. Like that, okay, so he'll distinguish himself because he already can shoot like a three, like an NBA kind of scorer. But what outside of that does he bring to the table? Hard to say.
So, top of the draft, no surprises. We all knew Flag was going one to Dallas, worst kept secret in the world. And over the last week or two, it became pretty obvious that Mr. Harper was going to find his way to San Antonio. So it has me thinking, Raheem. And I know we still have a free agency period that's left to play. And I know that there are some major monkey wrenches as far as injuries are concerned for both of these particular teams. But Dallas Mavericks, San Antonio Spurs. Who do you like more next year, Raheem?
I like the San Antonio Spurs by far. Look, I think Wemby is a top 10 player at this point already. I don't think the Dallas Mavericks have a top 10 player right now. And, as good as Kyrie is, he's coming back from an ACL injury. He probably won't be available. I don't know when he's going to be available.
I was going to say midseason if you're lucky. Midseason if you're lucky.
Anthony Davis, they call him street clothes. He's always banged up. So I'm rolling with the San Antonio Spurs. I just think, before Wemby got injured, they were on to something. And I'm going to continue to ride the Spurs team.
Fellas, the reason why I'm lock in step with San Antonio being, I think, the better team next year, there's just a higher ceiling for them. To me, I don't know how Dallas is going to necessarily achieve that ceiling with Kyrie coming back midway through the year, Anthony Davis being another year older, and it's the first year of Cooper Flag trying to figure it out at the next level, where I've seen Wemby figure it out at the next level. They do have De'Aaron Fox. Then they throw in Harper, who is more of a complementary piece. I know you could say the same about Flag. The thing is, Dallas is going to need Flag, I think, in the early going of the year, a lot more than San Antonio is going to need Harper because, hey, you have Wembanyama and you have De'Aaron Fox, and it kind of leads you to going to where you need to go. I'm very bullish on San Antonio. I don't think they're going to have the quantum leap because the Western Conference is too good. That's going to be a playoff team next year. We got a lot cooking in this loaded edition of East Coast Bias. So, in case you missed it, Kevin Durant's traded. The Houston Rockets have moved up the odds board considerably. Fair or foul? We'll dive into that. And maybe a big surprise or two that's coming your way. Celtics gutting the team. So what's next? The boys will try to figure it out right after this. Welcome back to East Coast Bias right here on the Ringer Gambling Show. Of course, for your friends on FanDuel TV. And there's been a whole lot of moving and shaking over the last few days. It's kind of crazy because you go from an OKC title, but before the OKC title, you get word that Kevin Durant is going to be traded to the Houston Rockets. Now the dismantling of the Boston Celtics over the last few days. From an odds perspective, House, we'll start here with Houston. Are they, in your humble opinion, justified to be right at the top of the leaderboard as far as odds are concerned behind the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference? Fair or foul?
I'm going to call it fair in the context of them as the 2 seed this most recently completed season, with their most glaring need, support in the half-court offense being addressed with, an all-time great who showed no falling off whatsoever over the course of Phoenix's most recently completed season, even though Phoenix was a train wreck of a team. That the scoring ability of Kevin Durant and this Houston defense, and what they gave up and didn't have to give up, to me, and it's mostly most prominently in the form of keeping Jabari right where needs to be. Like they have created an opportunity for some of the younger players to get a little bit more exposure and time, and by just sheer usage, taking the ball out of Jalen Green's hands, and led. We're going to have replacement shots coming from Kevin Durant that are high efficiency, high effectiveness shots. So I don't mind seeing Houston at the top of the boards. That's a different answer than if you ask me, will you bet them? Because the answer to that is no. That's a different conversation. But I think it's fair where they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely fair where they are. You look at the Houston Rockets, they were second in the Western Conference last year, but they were 12th in offensive rating, 116 points per 100 possessions. They were also 22nd in half-court offensive rating, 93 points per 100 possessions, and they were 24th in effective field goal percentage and bottom 10 in effective field goal percentage at every single area of the floor. Kevin Durant definitely raises that, and I love the fact that they didn't have to give up much. They gave up Jalen Green, who we saw is not that guy, and then they gave up Dylan Brooks. I mean, he was a big part of their identity on defense, but they kept guys like Amen Thompson. They kept Jabari. They kept Jabari Smith. I mean, like, that's huge. So I think this Houston Rockets team is definitely poised to improve offensively, and I think they have enough pieces to make another move. So I do think that they should be second in odds in the Western Conference. But like House said, you can't bet it now because a lot of the value is gone.
Well, fellas, it's wild. If you look at the odds on FanDuel Sportsbook to win the 2025-2026 title, OKC, reigning champs, going to be loaded. And House, you tried to make the argument, hey, there could be potential in just getting value at plus 220. Everything about their roster and the look and the feel of that team makes perfect sense. I think it comes down to, hey, the history of the NBA over the last 5-6 years tells us, hey, things have gone AWOL and have kind of gone not according to script for a lot of these defending champs. It's why we haven't seen one in quite a while. But, Raheem, when I give you these odds, OKC at plus 220, Cleveland at 8-1, they're the favorites in the East, barely. Houston at plus 850, Knicks, second favorite, despite the fact that they don't have a head coach at the moment at 9-1. Magic, I can't believe they've jumped as much as they have. They're at 12-1. And then it's the Minnesota, 14-1. Lakers, 15-1. Denver at 16-1. Out of those top favorites on the odds boards, does anything stand out to you?
I mean, you got to be looking at Cleveland if you're looking at the top teams. You got to be looking at Cleveland and New York, really. But I'm going to say Cleveland because, they were a 60-plus win team, and then they suffered injuries in the Eastern Conference playoffs, which really hurt them. So if you're looking at a depleted East with no Boston, Philadelphia, they still got an Embiid problem. And then you look at the rest of the conference. You've got the Indiana Pacers, no Halliburton. This Eastern Conference is bombed out and depleted. And, a couple of weeks ago, I gave you guys the Orlando Magic, I think 30-1, 40-1. All the value there is gone. So you kind of got to be looking elsewhere. And since you mentioned the top teams, I'm going to go with Cleveland.
I like that. I unfortunately am in this Western Conference trying to find value, and it's a tough argument to make. I'm looking at Minnesota at 14-1 and Denver at 16-1 because I like both of those teams, and I think both of those teams pose the most formidable challenge. Notwithstanding the enthusiasm we just shared for Houston, I like Minnesota and Denver matchup-wise against Oklahoma City better. And both of those franchises have giant question marks around what direction are they headed and where will they be when the season starts in November or end of October 2025. I have a slight preference for Denver because, notwithstanding, who was it, the team president that said they might consider trading Jokic? Somebody, some dummy associated with that franchise said that dumb thing. Notwithstanding that, they're formidable, and I think that if they can flip Michael Porter Jr. into some additional bench strength, if that is a possibility here in this offseason, they can get just a little bit deeper. They really showed the blueprint for handling Oklahoma City. So Denver at 16-1. It's just really Joker and his cohorts that won the title just a mere 2 years ago. That's really it for me.
That's the one I'd be all over House in the Western Conference, because I have to think in the back of my mind too, who can go and play with the Thunder? And I saw Minnesota last year in that conference final, for the most part, look thoroughly overmatched. And I didn't like what I saw. And I know their roster could look a little different by the time we hit training camp and whatnot. I know I'm getting Murray, but more importantly, I know I'm getting the Joker at 16-1. He's the best player in the sport. And Raheem, they took him to a 7th game. So I see 16-1 with the Nuggets. I'm on board with House. That's a bet in the Western Conference I would be willing to make. The Celtics, Raheem, they've had an interesting couple of days. So they are dismantling in many ways the 2024 team. We know they have the injury to Jason Tatum. That's going to basically cost him almost all of next season. Maybe he could come back at the end, but it's asking a lot. Well, in the last 48 hours, they have said goodbye to Drew Holiday, who's now a member of the Portland Trailblazers, and they have said goodbye to Kristaps Porzingis. It is going to be a much different looking Boston Celtics team. Yet, if you look at the odds, and I have them up on FanDuel, Celtics to win the NBA title, 17-1. What do you make of that line? Too low? Too high? Right where it should be?
And it's too high. I mean, it should be a lot lower. Look, this is a gap year for the Boston Celtics. You get rid of Drew Holiday, you get rid of Kristaps Porzingis. I don't know what Anthony Simons is going to bring to the table. And then obviously there's rumors that they can get rid of, other players as well. Now, I do think they're probably going to keep Jaylen Brown and Derek White as a part of their core for when Jason Tatum returns. But there's no way I'd be looking at the Boston Celtics on any futures at all. I think this is a team that, look, Joe Mazzulla is very competitive. They're probably going to be a playoff team, but you can't be looking at them. I want to talk about some long shots. Like, I think that is the most interesting thing here, especially when you consider how the NBA landscape has played out for the last couple of years. So, on Monday's episode of East Coast Bias, we mentioned the Detroit Pistons. They were 65-1. They're down to 50-1. But let me ask you guys about another team, a team who actually traded with the Boston Celtics and the Atlanta Hawks. They are 110-1 to win the NBA title. And not only do they bring in Kristaps Porzingis, but they get Jalen Johnson back. So what's stopping this team from making a deep Eastern Conference playoff run? You got Jalen Johnson back and you got Kristaps Porzingis.
Porzingis playing games, Raheem, for starters.
I hear you. But at 110-1, like I've said before, I think you kind of got to be looking at some of these long shots. This is a weak Eastern Conference, and the NBA postseason has been different the last couple of years. You see these long shots. Even if you go back to the year where Phoenix, they got to the finals, they were like 60, 70, 90-1. So, you could say the same thing about the Indiana Pacers. So I think you kind of owe it to yourself to ask yourself, which one of these teams can make a leap and who can surprise you? And I think the Detroit Pistons, as we see from the market, went from 65-1 to 50-1. And now the Atlanta Hawks, they feel a little bit mispriced at 110-1.
So I get that, Raheem. Listen, House, from a price perspective, I don't think Raheem is making any rational point in any way. But if you're asking me, who is more likely to make a leap next year in the East, it's Detroit. Detroit was a top 6 team last year. They got a dude in Cade Cunningham, who to me has just barely scratched the surface for kind of what he can be as an NBA top player, where I look at the top player for the Atlanta Hawks, and don't get me wrong, Trae Young gets his buckets and he puts up his numbers, but I kind of get the sense there is an established sense of what he kind of is as a player. I think there's another level that Mr. Cunningham can get to. I see 50-1 with Detroit, and that catches my eye. I like that one a little bit more myself.
Yeah, so I'm afraid to dabble with these long shot plays in terms of the NBA championship, because neither one of those teams has like gone through the reps to get themselves. But I for sure am comfortable with playing both of them to win the Eastern Conference, because all they have to do is get there. If you're sitting on a Detroit ticket at 15-1 to win the Eastern Conference, that's wonderful as a hedge in that situation of whoever they're going to be matched up against. And the same is definitely true of Atlanta at 31-1. The Atlanta Hawks, let me remind you, were in the Eastern Conference Finals less than 5 years ago, and vanquished, the Philadelphia 76ers on their way to getting there. So apologies to all you Sixers fans out here. It wasn't that long ago that the Hawks were in the Eastern Conference Finals. If you have a 31-1 ticket going into that situation, that's great. Now, the hard thing I have with the Hawks, I need an answer to who is going to play defense and how are they going to play defense. I like all these pieces. I like the Dyson Daniels. Yes, I'm confident that he can play defense, but who can help protect the rim? And you have scoring in Karis LeVert, and you have scoring in Kristaps Porzingis. But obviously the question is how much of Porzingis will be on the basketball floor. He can be a rim protector. He played that role a little bit with Boston, but it's just not reliable enough. Capella, I don't know. Okongwu, maybe that's the answer. Maybe a breakthrough from him. But the idea of a long shot to get to the conference final, because then you have a great heads position. This is what gets the juices flowing, JJ.
Okay, so fellas, here's what needs to be figured out. Raheem, you were all over this with Orlando. You kind of saw a team on the up and up, had a little bit of a down regular season, but the pieces were there, and you're like, hey, they got a big move coming. They're a team that's going to be a different sort of stratosphere type of team the following year. And I think we could all agree that Orlando should profile as a top 4 seed type of team within the Eastern Conference. We're about to hit NBA free agency. Draft is come and gone. I know it's impossible to try to predict who's going where, what's happening between now and next week, what sort of big move is going to be made. It's not a great free agent class, but the NBA is weird. There could be a monstrous move or two that comes out of nowhere, and it's like, holy smokes, this changes things. If there's a team, Raheem, that we should be looking at saying, maybe we want to get in on them before a big move comes, is there somebody that you would think about here, or no, you don't have one in mind?
I don't have one in mind. I mean, I gave you guys the Orlando Magic a couple of weeks ago. I can't come up with another one.
I know,
as good as
but
that.
you know what, Raheem? The league is weird. You could have another one that pops up that maybe catches your interest. That's why I got to ask.
I mean, and then Kevin Durant just got traded. So at some point, we're kind of reaching. House, do you have one? Because I don't.
Only in the sense of reaching. It's definitely a reach, and it's the pedigree. It is some could fairly argue this is a long lost, world that you're occupying, House, that the version of this team no longer exists. But Miami Heat sitting there at 50-1 to win the Eastern Conference. Like, we have slept on the Miami Heat before. I mean, it was 2010 that LeBron announced his intentions to head down to South Beach. So it's been 15 years. And that's, for Pat Riley, we haven't really seen him a big splash in the pool. But is he really going to go out like this? Like with Jimmy Butler basically showing him D's nuts on his way out the door, and everybody saying, well, this Miami team is dead as fried chicken. Is that really the world that we're going to occupy? Miami, if I'm going to go in a long shot direction with respect to free agency, they do have some guys that can play. I mean, the Tyler Hero extension, okay, fine. They still have Bam. And they have pieces that fit other teams in terms of contract stuff. Rozier could be a contract piece that gets moved. Duncan Robinson is a contract piece that gets moved. So that would be my reach.
Boys, just beware. All seems quiet now on the Western Front. Get it, Raheem. Bane gets traded to the Magic. Durant. Like, everything about what you are saying is perfect in theory. I just know that we could be sitting here this time next week saying, holy smokes, I can't believe this happened. Be ready for that.
All right, so I got a thought. The Lakers have Luka Doncic. The Lakers have LeBron James. If you ask me, if they get a big in there, they're a legit contender.
I don't hate that.
If I have to name one, it's the Los Angeles Lakers. And, I'm a big, if you look at the history of the NBA, it's a young man's game. So I really don't like betting on teams who one of their best players is 40 years old. But if you look at all of those old teams in the West, the Golden State Warriors, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Lakers, if there's one old team I'm willing to bet, and it's not really an old team, it's just an old player, it's LeBron James and it's Luka Doncic. And I think if they get a big, they can overcome the fact that LeBron is 40 years old.
Yeah, and listen, LeBron's still playing like a tough 15, 20 player in the sport. So he's superhuman and he's the cyborg. And House, the thing with the Lakers is you're not looking at LeBron as the alpha, as the number one player on the team. That bet to me is entirely dependent on Doncic being the guy.
Well, I'm not worried about Luka. It's the thing for the Lakers is the incredible favor that Nico Harrison and the Dallas Mavericks conferred upon this franchise and the NBA by virtue of asking for absolutely nothing in return. A heads-up trade of old-ass, broke-ass Anthony Davis for Luka Doncic, a generational player. And they have plenty of assets, the Lakers do, to add in some of this front court help that we're talking about here. They decided to not lock themselves into Mark Williams at the trade deadline, and that's a tell. That to me reveals something about, let's just sit tight, see how the summer plays out, see who comes available. We are still the Los Angeles effing Lakers, top of the billboard, and Austin Reeves is out there. Rui Hachimura is out there. And they still have first-round draft picks that are available. So the Lakers are live. I mean, this observation is on the money.
Boys, got a lot more coming your way. House, Nathan Hubbard, and yours truly going to dive into the golf. Interesting developments the last 2 weekends. U.S. Open, Travelers. Look ahead to what's going to be coming up in late September in my backyard and what it means for Keegan Bradley. And plays on the Rocket Mortgage this weekend in Detroit. We got a grab bag coming your way. We got best bets coming your way. Loaded show. Come right back. All right, boys. Welcome back. It's East Coast Bias grab bag time. Bunch of things coming your way. House, I'm starting with you. The New York Knicks will hire a coach with experience or somebody who has never done the job before from a head coaching perspective. I give you the bet. I give you the two-sided coin. What's your gut feeling right now on who the Knicks are going to hire? First-time head coach, somebody with experience?
I think it would be a first-time head coach because you don't want the stink of guys that perception-wise would be regarded as retreads or perhaps failed in other situations. The guys that are available, Mike Brown, Budenholzer, Mike Malone, they all left Frank Vogel. Their previous situations ended with, less than 100% success. So you can say with, one of these assistants, I love the Mike Nori from Minnesota. I mean, the job.
I'm starting to get suckered into Nori, House. I texted you guys that the other day. I didn't know much about him. I watched his pressers. I watched the way he sounds at the media. I go, sign me up. It's been fun in New York.
So that dress rehearsal he had when Chris Finch went out with the knee injury, and it was at playoff time. It was high leverage, crunch time stuff, and the T-Wolves barely skipped a beat. If you want to go in that kind of direction, I think that's a blank slate for the Knicks and the Knicks fans that they might be able to sell to people.
Raheem, the next one is for you. The Atlanta Braves, who were my preseason pick at the beginning of the year to represent the National League in the World Series, got off to a rather rotten start, as we well documented. They have absolutely owned the New York Mets. They've won 5 consecutive games against the Mets. They swept the series last weekend. They won the first 2 games of this series at Citi Field. Atlanta, with Ronald Acuna back, and he is raking. He is playing like one of the best players in the sport. They're plus 250 on the FanDuel Sportsbook app to make the postseason. Can I convince you to get on board with an Atlanta team that, yes, stunk up the joint early, but starting to find it a little bit here? They own the Mets, plus 250, yay or nay on the Braves?
You can convince me. And, one of the reasons, and I said this when I said bet the Braves to miss the postseason. I said that at one point in time, you're going to be able to get the Braves at plus money in order to make the postseason. So if you followed my advice and you took the no on the Braves to miss the postseason, you got a free roll right now. You pretty much, you got an opportunity for some free money. So let's take it. And they're only 6 games back of the wild card. And you look at the teams ahead of them, the Arizona Diamondbacks. Their pitching is abysmal. I mean, their bullpen, is all beat up. You look at the San Diego Padres. They can't score runs consistently. So, they could wipe out this lead rather quickly and get themselves into the wild card race. So I really like this one. Let's take the Atlanta Braves.
I like the sound of that. And I'd keep an eye on this one. The Toronto Blue Jays are not a serious team. They're plus 106 to miss the postseason. I am not a believer in Toronto at all. And if you're looking at the AL East, the team that's going to be a thorn in the side for the Yankees is those pesky, spunky Tampa Bay Rays that are playing their games at Steinbrenner Field right now as we speak. They can pitch. They can steal bases. They got an excellent manager. They find ways to win. House, we got to keep playing those total base and those stolen base props for Acuna. Please share with the audience what do we got to be doing?
It's at least a minimum of an over 1.5 bases play for Acuna, and every time you can find a prop on stolen bases, and FanDuel is the most generous with these. Jump into that FanDuel Sportsbook and play total bases and stolen bases for Acuna. He's starting to run again, and those are cashes at plus prices, which is very nice.
And they're juicy prices because they're factoring in, hey, you're only going to have 4 or 5 at-bats in a game. Are you going to go and actually steal bases in those scenarios? But Acuna, Braves need the games. He's on base a ton. Ride the hot hand. That's basically the way the handle is. You want to ride the hot hand. Boys, when we come back, it's a limited card. So we don't have a lot to choose from. But what we will try to do is find you a winner to send you on your way. Maybe it's in the world of Major League Baseball. Maybe it's in the futures market. Maybe it's in the golf market. I don't know what we're going to be giving you, but it's coming up. Best bets on this final June East Coast bias on FanDuel TV. Coming right back. Welcome back to East Coast Bias out here on FanDuel TV and on the Ringer Gambling Show. It's basically fairway rolling now, once again, on East Coast Bias. It's John Jastrzemski, joined by the guys who kill the golf pod on a regular basis. Joe House, Nathan Hubbard, you're both back with us together. And Nate, I have been captivated by the golf the last 2 weekends. Between Spawn and the U.S. Open and everything we had at Oakmont. And then the Travelers out of nowhere. That was like a low-key, really fun Sunday, seeing Fleetwood melt down, seeing Keegan Bradley, of course, who's the New England guy, played at St. John. So everybody in that crowd was going nuts rooting for Keegan Bradley. Nice little preview, Nate, for the Ryder Cup, dude. I loved it.
It was hard to watch, Tommy. I think everybody, for the most part, who wasn't on that course was just cringing when you could just see that Tommy was starting to struggle. He handled it with a lot of class and a lot of grace at the end. But, man, that course, you're exactly right. It is a massively underrated. It really reminds me of, the Vegas course. There's some great ones that down the stretch have holes that can turn it. And, boy, Tommy one of these days he's going to win. And I think he scares the heck out of me with the Ryder Cup situation. The craziest part of that whole experience was watching Keegan Bradley not even try to console Tommy. He didn't even pat him on the chest. He didn't give him any kind of hug. He just looked him in the eye, shook his hand, and moved on, which I think was exactly sort of portending how Keegan feels about the Ryder Cup. He knows Tommy's going to be a little more dangerous there than he was in Hartford, Connecticut.
Well, I guess I'll start with this. Is he? Is Tommy Fleetwood going to be more dangerous on the Ryder Cup at Bethpage Black than down the stretch? Which is going to be more pressure for Tommy Fleetwood? The Bradley thing was obviously amazing, and just for the purposes of context and what you guys are observing, the whole sports world was riveted by that the end of that golf tournament, because there were only a handful of events this weekend. It was like
There's
the
nothing
NBA
going on.
finals.
I mean, it was game 7 of the finals at night. It was a handful of baseball games on during the afternoon. So, like, yeah, like if you're sitting around at like 5, 6 o'clock house, it was perfect. I was like, dude, back 9, Travelers, sold. I'm in.
Yeah,
ratings reflected it.
They crushed. Yeah, they crushed ratings wise. And there were only 3 sporting events that had more viewers than the final round of the Travelers, and they were all NBA Finals games. But the truly riveting thing now is, where are we in terms of this U.S. side with the Ryder Cup? Because FanDuel Sportsbook, the odds this week, now the odds are down right now, but this week it was minus 130 for the U.S. to win and plus 140 for the Euros. Minus 130, the implied probability there is like 56%. It's not a dominant outcome that the sportsbook is projecting. And I think that's a function of this U.S. team. Like, listen to the guys right now. The top 6 for your U.S. team, JJ, are Scotty Scheffler, Xander Schauffele, JJ Spawn, Russell Henley, Bryson, great, and Justin Thomas. But then Colin Morikawa, Ben Griffin,
who just fired his caddy again.
I saw that again.
Ben Griffin, Captain Keegan Bradley is in there at 9 right now.
Well, fellas, he's got to be on the team, right?
He has to be on the team.
Has to be.
He's got to be on the team
because of this list. I mean, House should keep going. There's not anybody underneath Keegan right now that I trust on this Ryder Cup team other than Patrick Cantlay, I think, House. I mean, Andrew Novak, Brian Harmon, Matt McNeely, Harris English. Do we trust those guys right now more than Keegan?
Patrick Cantlay's not on the list right now. He's 14th. He's not in the top 12. The top 12 have Brian Harmon and Maverick McNeely and Harris English, all ahead of Patrick Cantlay, well ahead of Jordan Spieth, ahead of Sam
25th.
Burns. Yeah, right. Like, some of your guys, your stalwarts in these previous international competitions, are not currently on the list for U.S. side, which is why that price is minus 130. Adding in there the fact that it's been 60 years since the last time that a player on the team also was its captain. And obviously it's kind of a different proposition now than it was in 1963 when Arnold Palmer did it. Right, Nate?
It is. And when you look across to the other side, House, and look at that list of guys, you'd be afraid. And that's before I tell you that John Rahm is all the way down at 17 and is 1,000% going to be a captain's pick. So that side right now with Fleetwood and Hatton and Bobby Mack and Lowry and Sepp Straka, who's won big tournaments this year, and Ludwig, who hasn't totally stepped up, but you know he's gonna, and Justin Rose. I mean, there's a scary bunch sitting across the other side right now. House, you have been betting Europe for the first part of this year. Where do you stand right now?
More money down. I'm plus 140 is a great price. I love this year.
It really is.
It is a great price.
I'm not. Don't misunderstand. This is just shopping in an efficient market, right? Like, you put all these brand new players on the U.S. side, guys with no international experience, no meaningful international experience, and you put them up against all these horses on the Euro side. One of the narratives all season long, JJ, for Nathan and I on the Fairway Rolling podcast has been how outstanding the European players have been playing on the PGA Tour. They were winning at quite a clip. Great job by JJ Spawn, protecting America's interests with the U.S. Open. But, the run that Rory's been on, the Sepp Straka thing, Thomas Detry won the Phoenix Open. I mean, Hovland has a victory this year. These guys, Shane Lowry has been, collecting top 5s like I collect steak quesadillas on a Taco Tuesday. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are around the hoop. It's been that way all season. So I just keep adding to the portfolio with the Euro side as the price continues to be attractive.
I totally get that. The pound-for-pound roster looks more impressive and is flat-out playing better. But, Nate, that home sort of field golf course advantage, it's just been, like, automatic in these Ryder Cups, dude.
It has, and Beth Page with New York City and Keegan, you noticed he changed his language on the 18th green after he won. He usually says, I love playing for New England. He changed that to, I love playing for the Northeast, because that, I think, in his mind encapsulates New York City and Beth Page Black. That's unequivocally going to be the 13th teammate. And I think you are wise to be wary, because that crowd's going to be bananas. But I just think head-to-head, it is a scarier look than we've seen it in a long time, U.S. versus Europe.
Boys, we do have an event this weekend. We'll see if it lives up to the last two. I mean, it's a pretty damn high standard when you think about the U.S. Open and the Travelers. But this event coming up in Detroit, House, not a loaded field. It's not the same sort of field that we saw last week at the Travelers in Cromwell. What's catching your eye?
Yeah, it's not a loaded field compared to a signature event, but there's still lots of very good names in this field. And for this event, it's one of its very best fields. Colin Morikawa's at the top of the leaderboard. Patrick Cantlay is up there. Keegan coming off of his win. And I'm sure that Keegan would love to put to bed this conversation around whether he would put himself on the team or, or should he defer? I mean, there's no question that he should put himself on the team, but if he gets there automatically by points, then that's it. We don't have to talk anymore. But I'm looking at a handful of guys. Now, the attributes of this golf course, you have to be able to hit the ball a mile. You have to be able to putt, and really you just need to get a hot putter for the week. And you have to be able to convert those long drives. So it's long drive, short club in your hand, like wedge, birdie or better. So you want to be able to shoot 22 under at a venue like this, and then you have to have a hot short stick. So if you're looking for a guy that has those attributes, that is driving distance and a great putter, Max Grazerman, he fits the bill. 20th in driving distance this year, 2nd in strokes gained putting over the past year, 5th in birdie or better. A perfect kind of fit for this venue. He's been collecting some high finishes. He, at the end of last season, was in the top 10 4 out of 6 events. So the guy's got the pedigree, and this kind of a field is exactly the one where you might see him a nice top 10, a nice top 20 play. Nate, that's my first guy.
I think this tournament is like you and me, House. It's got some junk in the trunk. There's some deceptively good guys at the top. There's a pretty thick backside to this tournament. That's why I really like top 10s and top 20s, like you said this week. You know who hits it a ton and occasionally gets a hot putter and who has been T9 and T15 in 2 of his last 3 starts? That's Cameron Champ. He's plus 340 to top 20 this week. I know you get scared from Cameron Champ, but he has won twice on tour, and the game is quietly getting better. So I'm loving the opportunity to play Cam Champ top 20 this week.
Like the sound of that. Let me throw a name at you guys. I'm a skinny lefty. I'm a sucker for a skinny lefty. Batia, I'm seeing him around 35 to 1, 40 to 1. Nate, top 5, top 10. Can I get you on board?
You could certainly get me on board for Akshay. I think right now he really has designs on a Ryder Cup spot. He's going to need to do a lot more. At the beginning of the year, it looked like he had a chance. He really was hitting the ball good. He is a top young gun, and this is the kind of course that he can thrive on. I like it.
Yeah, the nice thing with Akshay is he has that second place finish last year. Now, if your glass half empty, he kind of choked it away. He could have won the golf tournament.
Oh, he did. Big time. Big time.
On the 18th hole. But he has been trending in the right direction. He had kind of chipping yips at the signature event down in Hartford, but that isn't really a thing that you're looking for. You're not really that worried about strokes gained around the green at this Detroit place, because what you're doing is hitting the hell out of the golf ball and then getting on there and trying to roll in these putts and make some birdies. So I like the idea of Akshay channeling some of the positive vibes from last season, JJ.
Nate, before we say goodbye, any other plays you like for this tournament?
Again, here's a guy who hits the crap out of the ball, and that's Benyon, who's 34th off the tee this season. He's plus 220 to top 20. He tied for 6th in Canada, tied for 14th this past week at Travelers. He's 46th in the world. You got to, again, junk in the trunk field. I can get him to top 20. Give him to me all day.
Yeah, I want to make sure that everybody hears these names. Minwoo Lee, who also has a second place finish at this venue, and Wyndham Clark, who is notwithstanding his terrible behavior at the U.S. Open, was playing decent golf until he choked away a made cut opportunity there at Oakmont. But he validated with a decent performance in terms of strokes gain off the tee, and he was second in driving distance. This dude just pounds the golf ball. and it would be a nice story for him to have good success at this place and come out and tell the world, I've been struggling with whatever it is he's struggling with. I'm not sure if you're allowed to use the D word on the FanDuel TV, but I've been a D word, a D bag, a D word. I'm sorry, and I'm happy to be playing good golf again.
Yeah, T8 last year in Detroit, he's got 3 rounds of 66 and 164 in his last 3 events. It's coming around for Wyndham. Locker rooms, beware.
Nate, it's always fun, buddy. Enjoy your July 4th. We'll need you before the British. So you may have to pencil that in for your FanDuel TV schedule. Not that you need any more responsibilities right about now, but I'm giving you
Thanks as always, JJ. Appreciate it.
Nathan Hubbard, fairway rolling with our buddy Joe House. We'll come back. Best bets still to come before we say goodbye right after this. Before we say goodbye, and I know we have limited options now. House, I'll start with you. I know what direction you're headed. I know you're thinking Rocket Mortgage. What do you got for me, buddy?
Going right to the first tee. You know how we do it, JJ. Of course, my man Cameron Young. We like with this Detroit golf club guys that can pound the ball miles down the fairway, and it doesn't even really matter at this place whether or not you stay in the fairway. Cameron Young had 2 top 5 finishes before last week at Hartford, caught his breath, a top 5 at the U.S. Open, a top 5 at the Canadian Open. This venue suits him very well. I'm playing him top 5 at the Rocket Classic, plus 600 on the FanDuel Sportsbook. That's my best bet.
Now it's my turn. Mets Braves. Mets finally got the Braves. They were a big favorite today. Soto hit 2 home runs, took care of business. Going back to Atlanta well. I think the game just means a lot more to the Braves. I think winning 3 out of 4 means a lot more to them than it means the Mets. And Griffin Canning has not been particularly good over his last 7 or 8 starts. I think that Atlanta lineup gets after Griffin Canning. I'm getting the Braves basically at even money. Atlanta Braves, even to take down the Mets.
All right, I can't believe I'm doing this. A lot of people are going to find this as a surprise, but I'm going to take Kevin Durant 85-1 to win MVP.
Ooh.
Last year, look at Houston Rockets. They were second in the Western Conference. I think they're gonna be in that same range this year when you look at the landscape of the Western Conference. So I think at 85-1, if he's gonna give you 27 and 5 or 7 or whatever, he's going to be in the MVP discussions, and I think this is a good price.
That's going to do it for this loaded edition of East Coast Bias. Who knows? Maybe we'll hear from Kevin Durant and his burner accounts. Anything is possible. For Joe House, Raheem Palmer, and John Jastrzemski, good job by Tucker and Stefan. Summer awaits. We'll see you next week. We'll see what the NBA has in store for us over the next few days. Be good, everybody.